So here's the thing, the West these days, and I can generalize, and I insist on generalizing, the West doesn't understand authoritarianism. Wow, authoritarianism was even a fact in the West until very recently, around World War II. Authoritarianism was the normal way of conducting one's life. Now it's all modernity. Uh, but modernity, unfortunately, lacks the discipline that is co-partner with authoritarianism. Modernity says, well, if it feels good, it's all right. If it feels good, then I'll follow that as my fundamental instinct. What feels good is good. What feels bad is bad. Whereas authoritarianism, for all of its real faults, had standards, had ideals that transcended what feels good or what feels bad. Authoritarianism said, well, it's duty, it's what you need to do, and it's going to feel bad. Or it may feel good, but that's irrelevant to the fact that you need to do it. So that was a transcendence of feeling. Modernity does not transcend feeling. Modernity hypostasizes, which means reifies, which means puts into golden letters and engraved emblems the sensation of feeling and says that's all there is. There's no more than feeling. If it makes me feel bad, it's necessarily bad. If it makes me feel good, then it's good in and of itself. So let's ignore the things that make us feel bad, because even entertaining them, even engaging with them mentally, never mind physically, makes me feel bad. So I won't even think about that. I won't go there. And as we now seem to be gathering the inkling of, the modern sensibility is a direct road to extreme narcissism, whereas the old sensibility was a direct road to an extreme schizoid state. You can't win either way, it seems. But joking aside, the modern sensibility does not understand the old sensibility. It has, it seems, lost track of it, maybe in some ways deliberately so, as a way of eradicating it. The postmoderns were not actually stupid, although they sometimes appear that way. In many ways, they were intent upon changing society by means of ignoring what they disapproved of and focusing only on what they would deem necessary and desirable to create a new society. So it's a matter of focus. They, postmodernists, are, and if they still exist, I should do it the other way around, were, and if they still exist, are idealists. And in the philosophical sense, an idealist is somebody that believes that the world is created through one's mind and not through material reality. Nietzsche was an idealist, but he was much more careful, much more nuanced, much more sophisticated. Postmodernism is a mass movement, and therefore, in a fundamental sense, is not in accordance with Nietzsche's notions and ideas and ideals, because anything that is of the masses is necessarily crude and corrupted and simplistic, and pertains to the desires and needs of mass consciousness. Postmodernism did do that. Postmodernism was not, in the Nietzschean sense, noble. It was not aloof. It was not a proper expression of something that was genuinely elite. And let's not deride this notion of elitism. Elitism just means being better than the masses. And how bad must one be if one is not better than the masses? One must be pretty bad indeed. Have a basic education anyway, and you're better than the masses. Go a step further, get a higher degree, and you ought to be better than the masses. And if you're not, you need to ask yourself some serious questions. You've put in the effort, you've done the hard slog, you've applied rigor, so why are you not better? Did something go wrong along the way? And so often it does. So often things are corrupted and confused. But I reflect back in wonder and amusement at how my attempt to conquer my internal authoritarianism was met with such uninterest and then ultimately with extreme hostility. And how it seemed to me that the current Western academics may be kicking an own goal, kicking for the enemy, scoring for the enemy. Yay! The enemy won, and I did it on their behalf. Weird Western academics. But what it all comes down to is the inability of modern people to understand the problem of authoritarianism. Now, I understood it. I understood it, of course, intrinsically. I understood it implicitly, but I, at the stage of doing my PhD, could not articulate the problem because it takes a long time to get down to one's own inner workings and do more than function intuitively on the basis of them. It's very hard if you're not in a situation that gives you the language to refer to your authoritarianism, to be able to talk about it. Modernity does not refer to authoritarianism. It seems like it's one of its prohibitions. It will not, it shall not, it will deny any evidence of authoritarianism. Don't know why, it just does. It's a good question. Why? Why can't it address this even, recent factor influencing the West in the early 20th century? It can't, or mid 20th century, it can't address it, can't redress it. So my attempts to redress and address my own authoritarianism was met with either blankness or ultimately what I found was extreme hostility. I'm gonna kick a goal for the other team on your behalf. I mean, goodness me, how stupid does that get? How awful, how shocking. How terrible and debasing and demoralizing does that get when one is trying to conquer internally one's own authoritarianism, but because it's deemed not to exist, it's sort of seen as something else. And that raises the question, well, what is it, what was it, what could it be seen as? And in fact, it can, I suppose, and once again, just furnishing some kind of semblance of a reason for very, very bad behavior against me, providing my, I guess, would-be enemies with even a rudiment of a reason for their very bad behavior. I would say that there's a possibility there that my attack on my own authoritarianism was viewed as a so-called left fascism, because authoritarianism is fascism, I suppose. It's not really. Fascism is something else. Fascism is where the working class, the workers, the everyday drones identify with their oppressors. That's fascism. But I suppose there's a psychology of it which may be somewhat linked to authoritarianism, although on the other hand, historically, authoritarianism was also a very key part of Soviet industrialism. So it's not fascism, but it's identifiable with fascism somehow psychologically. And if I'm mentioning fascism, that means I'm evoking it in the postmodernist sense. If you mention something, you bring it into reality, and suddenly there it is. Never mind that it was always there. Never mind that it was a historical fact. Somehow, by mentioning it, you are responsible for creating it. Weird, I know. But that's how philosophical idealists think. They think that reality doesn't exist unless it comes into your mind. So I think, basically my viewpoint was dismissed and actually hated upon as a left wing. Left wing means liberation, means against the establishment, means against the the limitations of any current ideology. So it's left wing. On the other hand, fascism. Left wing, liberation, fascism. My view was dismissed as a liberation fascism. Well, that's the best that modernists can do with it's a total contradiction, a total inability to come to terms with it. That's the best that modernists can do with understanding authoritarianism and understanding a project of liberating oneself from it. They say it's liberation fascism. Yeah, so that's why they're being attacked by ISIS. ISIS is their righteous condemnation from on high. Whichever God you believe in, ISIS is the expression of that, telling the Westerners, wake the hell up, there is something that's out there. It's there is this real hostility. You can't dismiss it with your minds. You can't play a mental trick on yourself and make it go away. Even kicking your own goal and being extremely masochistic will not be the answer to your problem in the long term. Actually, it will just make things worse. So good luck with that. Enjoy the consequence of your actions, really. But ISIS is the condemnation from on high against Westerners who ignore the reality of history and deride intellectual rigor and dismiss it as some kind of left fascism when somebody tries to conquer well, not fascism, but the authoritarianism within themselves. This is the way God judges you, and it's not going to be pretty.